In the blistering heat of 1934, British researcher Gus Freeman ventured deep into the heart of Central Africa, into the remote region of Mayo Kebi in present-day Chad. But he was not driven by colonial greed or political conquest. Instead, he followed whispers, local legends that told of a mysterious man dwelling in the wild, a man with actual horns growing from his skull. To the Western mind, it sounded mythical, even absurd. But to Freeman, who had spent his life chasing anomalies of nature, it was a thread worth pulling. Villagers in the area spoke of a secluded man living beyond the reach of society, someone revered and feared, called Najabiya Bate. They didn't refer to him as merely human, but as something in between, a sign, a warning, a sacred being. Most villagers refused to speak openly about him, as if the very mention of his name could invite some kind of spiritual disturbance. The only words they'd offer were brief and fearful: "He has horns. He knows things no man should know. Stay away." That was all Freeman needed to hear. He journeyed deeper into the forests, where the air grew thicker and even the animals seemed to step in silence. He wasn't seeking folklore anymore, he was seeking the man behind it. After nearly 4 weeks of isolation, surviving on dried fruits and borrowed native knowledge, Freeman stumbled across something unexpected: a wooden hut camouflaged under layers of creeping vines and giant trees. There, sitting quietly on a smooth rock, was the man himself. Najabiya Bate. He looked up slowly, his skin deeply wrinkled, his posture calm, but what struck Freeman immediately were the protrusions on his head. 2 short but unmistakable horn-like growths emerged from his skull, natural, unforced, and terrifyingly real. Freeman was frozen, torn between fear and awe. Najabiya, however, simply smiled and said, "You came with questions. Are you ready for answers?" Thus began a strange companionship. Najabiya was no wild man. He was serene, soft-spoken, and remarkably intelligent. He showed Freeman local herbs and explained their properties with scientific precision, despite never having read a book. He could treat wounds, cure fevers, and identify venomous snakes from just their scent. Freeman quickly realized that the man was more than a physical oddity. He was a healer, a seer, and a sage. The villagers may have feared him, but nature had embraced him. He did not just live in the forest, he listened to it. And it spoke back. One night, as the fire crackled between them and the moon filtered through the forest canopy, Freeman finally asked, "Your horns, how did they come to be?" Najabiya stared into the flames and spoke slowly. "When I was born, a village elder saw a mark on my forehead and said I was chosen. As I grew, my head began to change. By age 10, the bones pushed outward. The village feared me. They sent me into the forest, thinking I was cursed. But the forest accepted me." Freeman examined the horns more closely. They were composed of dense keratin, the same substance found in human nails and hair. But their shape and symmetry were unlike any documented case. It wasn't just a medical phenomenon, it felt purposeful, destined. Najabiya continued, "These are not deformities. They are reminders. I am not here to live among men, but to learn from nature. I am not wounded, I am marked." Freeman, in his journal, would later describe the moment as one of the most humbling experiences of his career. In a world obsessed with normalcy, Najabiya stood as proof that what is different is not always broken. That sometimes, the most extraordinary truths grow from the most unexpected places. When Freeman left the forest weeks later, he carried no photographs. Najabiya had asked him not to capture his image. "Take my wisdom, not my face," he said. Freeman honored that request. He returned to England and published his findings in a quiet academic journal. The world, of course, fixated only on the horns. Scientists debated possible genetic disorders, rare skin conditions, and abnormal bone growth. But what Freeman tried to emphasize was lost in the noise. Najabiya Bate was not a medical case. He was a soul carved by isolation, wisdom born of suffering, and peace grown through solitude. Years later, when Freeman returned to visit him once more, the hut was gone. There were no signs of struggle, only a circle of stones, and an old carved piece of wood that read in tribal script, "I was never the horns. I was the voice beneath the trees." Today, we don't know where Najabiya went, or if he ever truly existed beyond Freeman's writings. But what remains is a message too clear to ignore. Those who are set apart by nature are not always meant to be feared, they are sometimes meant to be followed. Najabiya Bate may have disappeared into the wilderness, but his story still echoes in the silence of every deep forest. Perhaps, if you listen closely, you'll still hear him say, "I am not the horned one. I am the wise one."